Pet owners complain about the rising cost of veterinary prices, but what's to blame? Welcome to this special sponsored podcast courtesy of Animal Health Digest, a premier content curator collecting and commenting on the best information around the world for people working in animal health. I'm Brendan Howard, and today we talk with Dr. Jennifer Sperry about the rising cost of veterinary care. Pet owners say they're shocked and unprepared for the bill when they visit their local veterinary hospitals. But how can they cope, and what should they know about why costs are rising? Who's Dr. Perry? She's a veterinarian and a veterinary advisor at Independence Pet Group based in Canada. Independence has a number of products, including pet ID tags and software for pet adoption agencies, but chief among them, pet insurance brands for Hartville, American Kennel Club, and the ASPCA. And these are products specifically designed to help manage the risk of costs for services at veterinary practices. So, Dr. Sperry has written an opinion piece with her perspective on 5 reasons other than inflation for these increasing costs. Have you thought about these reasons yet? How do your products and services affect them? And in your role in animal health, how do you manage client expectations about costs and help people see the value of products and services that animals need? Sperry's thoughts may help. So let's jump in with the first reason, besides technology and inflation, that Dr. Sperry wrote about. Okay, so the first one you mentioned in the article is quality and safety standards. So maybe you could just kind of explain, what do you mean when you're talking about that?
Yeah, so I've been in touch with the veterinary profession my entire life. So from when I was a child to when I was a high school student, and throughout my career in clinics and now in insurance. And I've seen a huge evolution in the safety standards. So when I was a co-op student in a veterinary hospital in high school, there was nobody in that hospital overnight. So if a patient was hospitalized overnight, that patient was alone. And that's not something that would happen today. If we are hospitalizing a patient, that patient's going to be monitored. So that's one of the examples of the increased expectations on veterinarians and the increased, I guess, kind of commitment to quality. And a couple of other things as well. Like vets are kind of known for being, we'll say, good at finding ways to save money, and we always have been.
And they're not just doing it for themselves, but obviously veterinarians are doing it for their clients.
Exactly.
They're trying to make this
veterinary clients are very, very sensitive to cost. And so in order to keep it within reach, vets are constantly looking for ways to cut costs. But one of the ways that used to be done is that we used to use a scalpel blade in the surgery, throw it in the cold sterile, let it disinfect and then reuse that scalpel blade, or suture material, lots of other areas where, maybe it's environmentally friendly, but from an infection control and even from a quality standpoint of the equipment or the product that we're using, was not really the best thing to do. And we know that now. And our clients demand more quality in that area. So it really has evolved quite a bit.
And do you think I could see the staffing making a huge difference? The cost of scalpels and some basic kind of surgical PPE that people wear and maybe used to reuse and now don't. That's probably not a high cost, but your staffing thing about the fact that you need to have staffed medical people, that has to have an impact.
It does. And it's such a positive impact. For me, if I buy something 2 weeks ago and I buy it today and the price has changed, I want to know, what am I getting? If it's more, if it's 10% more, if it's 20% more, what more am I getting when I pay this extra price? And I think the biggest factor and the biggest change in vet medicine is the entry of qualified, educated, credentialed support staff. So it used to be that the only licensed person in the building was the veterinarian, and everybody else was like a well-trusted, on-the-job trained person, but they weren't professionally trained. And now we have very highly trained veterinary technicians, and even the person working on the front desk is probably specifically trained for that reception duty through a college program.
And do you think in the clinic itself, people perceive the necessity of paying those people more? Or do you think overall kind of it sort of spreads out the cost of getting those credentials, the cost of getting that schooling? People bear that and they go in expecting they need a higher salary they need a higher salary to match all the money they put into their school.
Yeah, they need a higher salary to match the investment in their schooling, but also the level of responsibility they have within their job and accountability. So if you're a registered veterinary technician, you're held to a certain standard. If you don't meet that standard, you could lose your license. And so there is definitely a level of responsibility that's there that translates into a higher quality of care.
Well, you literally out of the 5, you went from the first to the second, and that leaves thinking about more credentialed, more highly skilled people. Your third example in the story was specialists. Now, I know a lot of people, it is perfectly possible for lots of people now to go through 15 years of a pet's life and never see a specialist, either out of choice or the medical conditions of their animal never called for it. How do you see the entry of more veterinary specialists and veterinary specialty work kind of permeating throughout the industry? How do you see that raising the cost of care for people that may not even touch a specialist?
Yeah. So number one is that a specialist will have more equipment, more training, and access to more up-to-date information. So it used to be that everybody was the family vet. And the family vet would try to tackle everything. So if you had a client that came in and their pet had cancer, you would try to deliver the best cancer care that you could. But at the end of the day, you did not have that cutting edge knowledge. Now, if you have a client that comes in that says, I want to beat this for my pet, you can send them to somebody that has really, everything, all of the tools that they need to treat that. So they are, of course, charging for their additional knowledge, but they're also opening the world up to a lot more equipment and a lot more drugs that may be more costly, but also maybe more effective for that pet.
It was interesting. I saw your fourth one was alternative medicine, and I think there is a perception. So it's either it's probably maybe undeserved, but the idea of holistic and alternative medicine is less costly than Western medicine. And so it sounds like you looked at it as, well, this is just an add-on to all the Western medicine you're seeing. I see a lot of people talking about this sometimes in like anti-Western medicine, pro alternative medicine. How do you see that playing into the money situation? You see people turning away from Western medicine for alternative, or you see these things oftentimes working together?
I see them a lot of times working together. I see a lot of clients coming in asking for advice on the traditional medicine track. They're looking for natural options. So when people are looking to cut costs for and going to alternative medicine, sometimes what they're looking to do is bypass the cost of consulting a professional. And sometimes that happens. And I'm probably not fully aware because those guys do bypass me.
Right.
But I get a lot of people that come in and say, what can you do for me that's natural or traditional or holistic? So they are still looking for that consult. They're still looking for the expert advice, but they have, they're not exclusively trying to cut costs. They just have a value system that really, really values that particular type of treatment.
Yeah. It was interesting. I thought a lot of those things are kind of settled in the hospital. The quality and safety standards, the medicine's getting better at the hospital, better credentialed staff, specialists, alternative medicine. And kind of your fifth one that you laid down was the human-animal bond. So tell me, from your perspective, how has the growth and the development of the human-animal bond led to higher veterinary costs?
Yeah, I think that people are just willing to pursue things a lot farther than maybe they have in previous generations. So of course, there are always different peoples and different approaches to pets. But I think in the past, more people really separated the family from the pet. And so when the pet encountered a crisis, they had a real strong cutoff for what they were willing to pay up to a certain point before they decided to euthanize. And I think now that point is being pushed out farther and farther because the pets are being brought in closer to the family. So pets they participate in vacations, they participate in birthdays, they're on Facebook with the family. So when that pet has, a real crisis, families they want to go a lot farther and provide more for their pets.
And naturally, because you work with a company that provides pet insurance, you see pet insurance as one of the solutions that can help with this. And you kind of let off from that human-animal bond one. And I wondered about that. Some people think they're willing to spend more money. So one natural response that people give, maybe it's like the Dave Ramsey thing, is like, well, you just save up regularly. Mm-hmm. So if you run your economy with the envelope method and you put cash in envelopes, whether they're digital or not, you just put money away to be used when you need mm-hmm. it. Tell me how, so that's like, you could just do that. Hey, instead of paying the monthly premium on pet insurance, well, you just put that money away. Tell me why you think pet insurance might act differently or help people either that won't do that, or that maybe doesn't answer all the problems you'd have in a typical
mm-hmm.
year.
So I'll give you an example using my own dog. I took my own dog out to the cottage, Canada Day long weekend. And he is only 9 months old. So I've only had him for 7 months. My insurance premium is $100 a month. So if I had saved $100 a month, since I've had him, I'd have $700. So I took him out to the cottage this weekend. He runs around like a fool. We've got lots of roots and like little uneven terrain. And he is a sight hound. He's a whippet, so he goes fast. And he got his foot in a little hole, and end of the day, he sprained his ankle, but I didn't know if he broke it or not. So, I don't want him to suffer. So I bring him in. I don't work at a clinic anymore. So I bring him in and I say, I know what I want. I want him sedated so I can get really good x-rays. I want pain control. And I want you to send those x-rays off to a radiologist, because if the wrist is the most number of bones in one little area. And if you're not an expert, and I'm not an expert at radiology, you might miss something subtle. So I send him, bring him in, they give me everything I want, and it is about $900, which, looking at the line items is totally fair. But I have five saved. I've only got 700, and I'm 200 in the hole now, and I have nothing left. So if he has another crisis, and he will, because he's that kind of dog, if he has another crisis within the next year, I've got almost nothing. But with my insurance, my particular insurance has a $5,000 limit, and it's going to renew in a year. So if I blow through that whole $5,000, a year from now, I'm going to have another $5,000, and it still only cost me the $100. So for me, it's about how long it takes to build the reservoir and how fast it can be depleted. And that's the real difference between saving and insurance.
And that's it for our great conversation with Dr. Sperry. Check the show notes for a link to her short opinion piece on this topic. And join us next time for more conversations with smart people in animal health. You can sign up for the e-newsletter at animalhealthdigest.com. And no matter where you are, what you make, or what you do, thanks for devoting your time today to thinking about one of the greatest industries around, animal health. But wait. ASPCA Pet Health Insurance is a sponsor of Animal Health Digest, and they had a few clarifications they wanted shared at the end here. First, plan premiums may vary based on location, your pet's breed and age, and the plan type and plan variables, including annual deductible, annual limit, and reimbursement rate. The premium and reimbursement example shared in this podcast interview was based on the annual deductible being met in full. Second, Dr. Sperry's policy covers eligible treatments for new and unexpected accidents and illnesses, including exam fees, prescriptions, hospitalization, surgery, referrals, and alternative medicine, prescription food, and medical devices where some limits apply. Dr. Sperry's policy limit is $5,000 annually with a $100 deductible and 10% coinsurance. Dr. Sperry had already met her deductible and had not yet exceeded her $5,000 annual limit in the example mentioned during this podcast. Third, pre-existing conditions are not covered. Waiting periods, annual deductible, coinsurance, benefit limits, and exclusions may apply. For all terms and conditions, visit aspcapetinsurance.com. Preventive care coverage reimbursements are based on a schedule. Complete coverage reimbursements are based on the invoice. Products, schedules, and rates may vary and are subject to change. Discounts may vary and are subject to change. More information is available at checkout at aspcapetinsurance.com. Last, full insurance product disclosure information can be found on the landing page at brendanhoward.podbean.com or in the show notes on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast. Have a good one.